Welcome back, everyone. We all learned it in school, right? DNA, the double helix. It's the blueprint of life, the chemical code, A's, T's, C's, G's. All very neat, very molecular.
Very reductionist, you might say.
Yeah.
And that's the standard picture. But what if that picture isn't just incomplete? What if it's missing the most dynamic, maybe even the most fundamental role that DNA plays?
Exactly. Today we're doing a deep dive into some really fascinating source material that fits that script. We're looking at DNA not just as chemistry, but as physics, as coherence.
Right. The sources are built around something called the Unified Coherence Theory of Everything, or UCTE. And this theory doesn't see DNA as a passive archive at all.
No, it frames DNA as a biological coherence engine. And specifically, we're going to unpack this idea of DNA acting as a fractal coherence resonator. Our goal today is really to dig into the details here, to explore this comprehensive shift in a way that's, well, hopefully engaging for you.
Okay, so first things first. What do we even mean by a coherence resonator? It's not just something that vibrates, like a tuning fork.
All right, it's more specific than that.
Much more. It's a structure, usually with a very specific geometry, that's designed to do several things. Capture, sustain, amplify, and importantly, transmit coherence, which is really organized energy and information across multiple scales, all at the same time.
And the UCTE says DNA is basically the prime example of this in biology.
That's the core idea, yes. It's the biological archetype.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot more complex than just holding genetic code. So how does it do all that? The UCTE breaks it down, right, into different functions or domains.
Exactly. There are 4 key domains that these sources outline, showing how DNA operates in this expanded role. We'll look at it as 1, a fractal antenna.
Okay.
2, as a coherence regulator. 3, functioning as a soliton corridor.
Solitons. Okay, we'll need to unpack that one.
We will. And finally, number 4, possessing a unique fractal spectral identity. Each domain builds on the others.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Let's jump into that first big shift, moving from the genetic archive idea to this coherence engine concept.
Right. So, section 1, from genetic archive to coherence engine.
Let's nail down the difference. The classical view, the one we all know, DNA, is that linear sequence, a molecular library. The focus is purely on the chemistry, the sequence, how it gets copied, how it codes for proteins.
It's all about material structure and replication. And look, that genetic code aspect is obviously real and vital. No one's denying that.
But the UCTE perspective is saying that's only part of the story.
A small part, maybe. The UCTE argues focusing only on the chemistry is like trying to understand how a smartphone works by just analyzing the plastic case and the lithium in the battery. You're completely missing the electromagnetic signals, the software, the actual information processing.
So the coherence view brings in those missing pieces, the fields, the resonance.
Exactly. In this view, DNA becomes this biological coherence engine.
Okay, coherence engine. If its main job isn't just coding proteins, what is its central task, according to this theory?
Fundamentally, it's about thermodynamics and information. Its main job is to restore and regulate symmetry within the living system. By doing that, it actively fights against entropy, against disorder.
How? By managing resonance.
Yes, by mediating resonance. Think of resonance as this structured, sort of harmonious exchange of energy and information. DNA manages this across all scales, from a quantum level underpinning everything, through the biological cell, potentially even linking up to universal coherence patterns.
So it's like a bridge, connecting the very small to the very large through organized vibrations.
It's the ultimate biological mediator, yeah.
So the classical view, DNA holds instructions, chemistry carries them out. The UCTE view, DNA actively guides a field of coherence within the cell, and the chemistry kind of follows the lead of that field.
That's a great way to put it. It's a huge shift. The argument is that the double helix structure itself, its specific shape, exists because that geometry is optimal for interacting with what the sources call the ontological flow of coherence itself.
Ontological flow. Like the fundamental way organization moves through existence.
Sort of, yes. DNA isn't just passively storing data written in chemical letters. It's actively translating these universal principles of order and coherence into the operational language of the cell.
And that language, that's not the genetic code, the ETCG. That's something else.
Right. The UCTE calls it the bioelectric code. This is crucial. The genetic code is chemical, structural. The bioelectric code is field-based. It's informational.
Made of, what, frequencies, patterns?
Exactly. Resonance patterns, specific frequencies, phase relationships between waves, coherent standing waves, that kind of thing. Think of the genetic code like the computer's hardware, the physical chips and wires.
Yeah.
The bioelectric code is more like the operating system and the software, the dynamic instructions, the signals running across the network in real time.
So how does DNA, this physical molecule, translate that universal coherence into this bioelectric code?
Yeah.
How does it create these patterns?
It acts as the main transducer. The idea is that the external coherence field from the environment, maybe even from the quantum vacuum, interacts with DNA's very specific fractal geometry.
And that interaction generates the signals.
It generates the specific resonance patterns, the frequency maps, the timing signals needed for life. This bioelectric code then guides everything when enzymes switch on or off, how cells coordinate, things that happen way faster than chemical signals could travel.
So the genetic code gives you the parts list, but the bioelectric code provides the timing, the rhythm, the actual operating instructions. It's conducting the orchestra, not just handing out the sheet music.
That's a perfect analogy. And it suggests that phenomena like, the incredible speed of cellular coordination might not be just random chemical bumps, but are actually directed by these DNA-generated field patterns. The chemistry responds to the field.
The field comes first. Okay. That really sets the stage. Let's get into the mechanics then. Domain 1, DNA as a fractal antenna.
Right. So forget the simple ladder image for a moment. The UCTE looks at the double helix and sees a highly sophisticated geometric instrument.
Because it's fractal. What does that mean in this context?
It means the structure exhibits self-similarity. The way it spirals, the major and minor grooves, these patterns repeat at different scales. The sources call it hyperfractal dimensional emergence. It's a fancy way of saying the geometry is incredibly intricate and recursive.
And why is being fractal good for an antenna? Why not just a straight wire?
Well, a simple antenna, like for your car radio, is usually tuned to a very narrow band of frequencies, right? FM or AM.
Sure.
A fractal antenna, because its geometric elements exist at many different sizes, can naturally interact with a very wide range of frequencies simultaneously. It's inherently multiband or wideband.
Ah, so it can listen and talk on many channels at once.
Exactly. It can sense, emit, and interact with electromagnetic fields across a huge spectrum, which makes sense if it needs to communicate with both the noisy, complex environment inside the cell and potentially much larger, more organized fields outside.
Is there any, actual physical evidence for this? Measurements?
The sources cite specific analysis, yeah. They claim DNA shows optimal resonance around 34 gigahertz.
34 gigahertz? That's really high frequency. Millimeter wave range.
It is. And that frequency range is known for having a massive capacity for carrying information. It suggests DNA might be involved in high bandwidth data transfer, not just slow chemical signaling.
Okay, interesting. And they mentioned gain.
Yes. The analysis apparently shows a positive gain of about 1.7 dBi.
Okay, for listeners, dBi measures how well an antenna focuses energy compared to a theoretical perfect sphere. 1.7 dBi isn't huge like a satellite dish, but for a molecule to show positive gain. That means it's not just randomly interacting with fields, it's actively focusing and amplifying certain signals.
Precisely. It confirms it behaves like a directional microantenna. This leads the UCTE to call DNA a fractal resonance operator, or FRO. Its job is to couple the external fields, the environmental coherence, to the internal bioelectric code. It's the interface.
Right. But here's where I always get stuck. The inside of a cell. It's warm, it's wet, it's noisy, molecules are bumping around constantly. How does this supposedly delicate fractal antenna function in that chaotic soup without getting instantly scrambled? How does it maintain signal integrity?
Excellent question. And that leads us directly into domain 2, DNA as a coherence regulator. If domain 1 is the antenna, domain 2 is the filter, the noise canceling system, the firewall.
So it actively manages the chaos.
Actively. DNA isn't just passively sitting there. It's constantly working to maintain that crucial boundary between order and chaos. It has to protect the coherent signals.
How? What's the mechanism?
It's described as a dynamic process involving two key actions, dissipation and amplification.
Okay.
So dissipation deals with the bad stuff, the incoherent perturbations, that's the random thermal noise, the collisions with water molecules, structural vibrations that don't carry useful information. DNA takes this chaotic energy.
And just gets rid of it.
Essentially, yes. It very efficiently dissipates it, spreads it out as harmless, low-level heat into the surrounding environment. It neutralizes the noise before it can disrupt the important signals.
Like thermal management for coherence?
You could think of it that way. And then simultaneously, it does the opposite, amplification. It selectively grabs onto the coherent flows, the useful, organized, resonant standing waves, and it amplifies them, sustains them, and feeds that organized energy into the cellular communication network.
So it's constantly sorting signals, trash the noise, boost the message.
That's the core of the regulatory function.
That sounds incredibly energy efficient. It must be, right? Otherwise, the cell would cook itself just trying to filter the noise.
Absolutely. And the sources point to electromagnetic measurements to back this up. They talk about the voltage standing wave ratio, or VSWR.
VSWR, that's a measure of how well matched an antenna is to its transmission line, right? How much energy gets reflected back versus transmitted forward.
Exactly. And the analysis cited suggests that DNA's VSWR gets very close to 1 at its resonant frequencies.
The VSWR of 1 is perfect. Theoretical perfection. It means basically zero reflected power. All the energy is being efficiently absorbed or transmitted.
Right. It indicates an almost perfect impedance match, suggesting incredibly efficient coupling and minimal energy loss in handling these signals. It acts as an exceptional gatekeeper.
Okay. And this regulation follows a specific principle.
Yes, it adheres to what the UCTE calls the conservation of coherence principle. This is presented as a fundamental law within this framework.
Like conservation of energy, but for coherence. How does that work physically with DNA?
The principle basically states that the total amount of coherence in a closed system remains constant, even if it changes form. If you lose some coherence locally, it has to be balanced out somewhere else. For DNA, this apparently translates mathematically. The power loss due to damping the incoherent stuff scales in a predictable way, specifically proportionally to the square of the vibration amplitude.
Okay, so the very process of losing coherence through noise is mathematically constrained, making it manageable.
That seems to be the idea. It ensures the system can always find its way back to a stable, coherent state. DNA is actively using this principle to maintain symmetry and order against the constant barrage of cellular noise.
Wow. Okay, so we have an antenna receiving signals, domain 1, and a regulator filtering and managing those signals, domain 2. But how does the useful energy, the amplified coherent signal, actually get moved around the cell? It still has to travel through that noisy, watery environment. Wouldn't a normal wave just fizzle out?
It absolutely would. And that brings us to domain 3, solitons, the negentropic couriers. The problem of lossless transport in a lossy environment is solved, according to UCTE, by using solitons.
Solitons, right. These aren't unique to UCTE, are they? I feel like I've heard about them in biology before.
You likely have. Physicists like Herbert Froelich and Alexander Davidov proposed similar ideas decades ago. They realized that normal thermal vibrations couldn't possibly transport energy effectively over long distances in biological molecules. It would just dissipate instantly. They theorized about stable, non-dissipative wave structures.
And UCTE calls these solitonic coherence packets.
Yes, they are defined as stable, self-sustaining wave structures that can travel without losing their shape or energy, even in a dissipative medium.
How do they do that? What makes them stable?
It comes down to nonlinearity. They emerge from nonlinear current profiles within the DNA lattice itself. In a linear system, like sound waves and air, waves just spread out and weaken. But in certain nonlinear systems, the wave's properties, like its speed, can depend on its amplitude or shape.
Okay.
This allows for a kind of dynamic balance where the factors that would normally cause a wave to spread out, dispersion, are exactly canceled by the factors that cause it to steepen, nonlinearity. The result is a stable, localized packet of energy.
A self-reinforcing wave.
Exactly. And this packet can transport both the vibrational energy and the encoded resonance information without dissipation, without loss.
Which is why they're called negentropic couriers. Entropy drives things to disorder and decay. These things preserve order.
Precisely. They represent negentropy, the organizing, complexity-building, life-sustaining force. By delivering structured information intact across the cell, they actively combat the tendency towards randomness and decay.
The sources give this whole process a name, biologistics.
Yes, biologistics. It's the term for this directed, organized flow of negentropic coherence within the cell. The solitons are the delivery trucks, the couriers running on informational highways.
So DNA launches these solitons.
Yeah.
Where do they go? What do they connect to?
They travel along the DNA strand, forming coherence corridors. These corridors aren't isolated, they link DNA's resonance activity to other key cellular structures. The sources strongly emphasize connections to microtubules.
Ah, microtubules, often implicated in cellular structure, maybe even information processing themselves.
Right. But also connections to cell membranes, the general bioelectric field of the cell. These soliton pathways are how DNA's regulatory activity gets broadcast and implemented throughout the entire cellular system almost instantaneously.
The sources use a very specific term here. They call these solitons biological manifestations of coherence eigenvalues. That sounds very mathematical, very precise.
It's definitely intentional. In physics and math, an eigenvalue represents a fundamental characteristic value or state of a system. Calling solitons coherence eigenvalues implies they aren't just random energy pulses.
They're discrete packets.
Discrete packets carrying very specific fundamental units of organized negentropic resonance. They are like the anchor points of order, the specific notes in the bioelectric code that guide the whole system's organization and prevent it from dissolving into chaos. They carry the system's coherence identity.
Okay, but still, launching energetic packets along a molecule, isn't there a risk of destabilizing the DNA itself or the stuff around it? Why don't these solitons just break things?
It goes back to their nonlinear nature and self-localization. The energy isn't just blasting outwards randomly, it's contained within the structure of the wave itself. The soliton's existence is coupled to the medium. It stabilizes with the medium rather than disrupting it. The coherence it carries actually helps maintain the very organization it needs to travel through. It's constructive, not destructive.
A very different picture of energy transport. Okay, that covers the antenna, the regulator, and the transport. What's the final piece? Domain 4, fractal spectral identity. This sounds like the unique signature.
It is. How does the system know which specific coherent patterns to generate and respond to? The answer lies in the DNA's unique spectral fingerprint. Dynamic analysis, looking at how the DNA vibrates and resonates over time, reveals complex fractal Fourier patterns.
Fourier patterns, like breaking down a complex wave into its component frequencies.
Exactly. But here, the patterns are fractal complex and detailed across multiple scales. These patterns are the unique signature of a specific DNA molecule's coherence field. UCTE calls them the DNA coherence eigenmodes, or DCEs.
So my DCEs are different from your DCEs.
In their specific details, yes, it's like the unique timbre and harmonic overtones of a specific musical instrument. That's the individualizing signature linked to your unique genetic makeup.
But wait, the sources say these spectra have a dual role, individuality and universality. How does that work? That sounds contradictory.
It does, but the key is the fractal nature again. While a specific pattern, the exact combination of frequencies and amplitudes in your DCEs is unique to you.
Okay.
The underlying rules that govern how that pattern is formed, the fractal scaling laws, the mathematics of coherence are universal. They are the same for all DNA, for all life, obeying these principles.
So my specific song is unique, but the musical scale and laws of harmony I'm using are universal.
That's a fantastic analogy. We are all unique expressions, but operating under the same fundamental coherence laws. This connects every living thing as part of a single, vast, universal resonator.
And there's a mechanism proposed for how this universal connection is maintained, something about holography.
Yes, holographic resonance. The idea is that these eigenmodes, these DCEs, are holographic in nature, meaning in some sense the information of the whole system, the universal coherence field, is encoded or projected into every part, into each DNA strand.
The whole and the part. So no DNA molecule is ever truly isolated. It inherently contains a representation of the universal field.
That's the implication. It ensures this deep integration, that everything is interconnected through these shared laws of coherence.
Okay, let's try to pull all 4 domains together now, back into the big picture of the UCTE. DNA is the coherence engine,
Right.
fractal antenna regulator, non-soliton transport, unique spectral identity.
And this leads us to perhaps the most profound and maybe challenging concept in the whole framework, DNA's role in the observer function.
The observer function, like from quantum mechanics, the observer collapsing the wave function. How can a molecule be an observer? It doesn't have eyes or consciousness in the way we think of it.
Right, it's not about seeing. In quantum physics, the observer is whatever interaction causes a system to shift from a state of multiple possibilities of the wave function into a single definite reality. It's the act of measurement or interaction that forces a choice.
Okay.
The UCTE proposes that DNA, through its resonance activity, biologically embodies this function at the cellular level.
So DNA isn't just responding to the environment. Its interaction with the coherence field is actively selecting outcomes. It's collapsing potential into actual biological events.
That's the idea. The incoming coherence field represents a realm of potential information and energy states. DNA, acting as the observer function, interacts with this field. And its specific resonance patterns, its unique DCEs, determine which of those potentials get actualized, which enzyme activates, which protein folds in a certain way, which cellular process initiates.
Wow, so it's translating quantum potentiality directly into biological reality. It's participating in the creation of definite outcomes from indefinite possibilities.
It's the mechanism that bridges the quantum realm of probability to the classical realm of specific biological function. It takes the fuzziness and makes it concrete.
That puts DNA. That elevates it incredibly high in the hierarchy of biological importance.
It does, and the UCTE framework visualizes this with the concept of the universal coherence ladder.
A ladder representing scale.
Exactly, an ontological scaling of coherence. It goes from the most fundamental source of potential coherence all the way up through organized matter, living systems, maybe even cosmological structures. DNA sits on a crucial central rung of this ladder.
Why central?
Because it's the primary biological structure that performs this critical translation, bridging the gap between the underlying potential field and the manifest reality of life.
And the theory gives a name to the very bottom of that ladder, the ultimate source.
Yes, the zeta naught potential field.
Zeta naught.
It's described rather poetically as the pregnant void of coherence. You can think of it as the pure, undifferentiated, zero-point energy field, the ground state of the universe, the ultimate reservoir of potential information and organization, pure possibility.
So DNA's observer function is tapping into this zeta naught field, this infinite potential.
And through its resonance and regulatory actions, it draws out specific forms, specific coherent patterns, and actualizes them at the processes of life. It connects the ultimate void of potential to the actuality of biological systems.
So DNA becomes the most direct physical expression within us of this entire universal coherence ladder. Proof, maybe, that our physical structure isn't just random chemistry, but is fundamentally tuned to these universal laws of coherence.
That's the profound implication, yes. We aren't just isolated bags of chemicals. We are intrinsically part of the universe's informational and coherence architecture.
This has been quite a journey. We've really taken DNA apart and put it back together in a completely new way, moving way beyond just the chemical code.
Absolutely. To recap, we've seen DNA framed as this active fractal coherence resonator. Its geometry makes it a wideband antenna resonating around 34 gigahertz with positive gain.
Its structure allows it to regulate coherence with incredible efficiency, near-perfect VSWR filtering noise and amplifying signal, conserving coherence overall.
It uses solitons, these stable, non-dissipative wave packets, as negentropic couriers for lossless information and energy transport via biologistics.
And all of this is governed by its unique fractal spectral identity, the DCEs, which defines its individuality while simultaneously connecting it to universal coherence laws through holographic resonance.
And perhaps most radically, it acts as the biological observer function, collapsing potential from the fundamental zeta naught field into the specific ordered reality of life.
It truly positions DNA as the cellular coherence engine, restoring symmetry, fighting entropy, and proving that life is fundamentally organized by coherence dynamics, by resonance, not just by chemistry alone.
The chemistry provides the scaffold, the structure, but the dynamics, the instructions seem to be field-based, based on resonance.
Now, the sources hinted at where this might lead next, connecting some dots. They emphasize the link between DNA's soliton corridors and microtubules.
Right, and microtubules are themselves complex structures implicated in cellular organization, maybe even higher-level information processing.
So here's the final thought, something for you, our listener, to really mull over. If DNA's resonance, its observer function activity, physically and informationally connects to microtubules, structures potentially involved in consciousned or cellular intelligence.
What does that imply? Could it be that what we experience as consciousness, or what constitutes cellular intelligence, is actually a scaled-up version of this same coherence management, an amplification of the very observer function that originates with the DNA resonator?
If the language of life is resonance, maybe consciousness is simply the experience of that resonance reaching a certain level of complexity and coherence. A fascinating and perhaps unsettling thought to end on.